fact, we've also got Mark Matthews joining in, Head of Investment Research at Julius Baer. Mark, thanks so much for taking the time out. Let's get in a take as to what exactly you believe the investors are prepping for when it comes to the Fed move.
Of course, nobody expects a cut from the Fed in its coming meeting, but as you rightly pointed out, the European Central Bank has cut rates. The Bank of Canada did too last week. So I think the big developed market central banks are moving, and the inflation readings in the US should continue to moderate. We cover about 20 leading indicators of personal consumption expenditure prices, which is the Fed's favorite measure of inflation. It's the most accurate, and the majority of those are continuing to suggest that inflation will approach 2% by the end of this year. So we think that the Fed will cut rates in September, and then again another cut in November and another in December. And that's something that should be welcome for the market.
Mark, I'd like to draw your attention to what's happening in India. The election cycle is over. India has come back to power. The cabinet was announced, and if you just read the news, the formation of the cabinet is identical to what it was in the earlier term of the NDA government. So from a global investor standpoint, what is the messaging and how would you read into this entire event?
Well, there was another election on the other side of the world almost at the same time, which was in Mexico. And there was a left-wing government that was elected, and their stock market has tanked since then. Whereas, as you know, the Nifty is just 0.5% away from an all-time high. And so it's been a totally different reaction, which I think is indicative of, as you say, the continuity in the government. And the other thing I would say is that if India was a small economy and there wasn't a lot of just organic growth in front of it, then I would be concerned about less reform, because you would need reform in order to get better growth in a smaller and more mature economy. But India is a country of 1.4 billion people on its way to 1.7. There's just so much organic growth in front of it that even if the reform-based growth decelerates a bit, and I'm not saying it will, but intuitively it could, based on the fall in BJP votes in the rural areas of the north. Even so, I still think that we're looking at a very healthy rate of organic growth in the country, as we say about 7% per year, let's put it like that. And that should translate into earnings growth in the low double digits. So with that in mind, I think that the Nifty is right to be where it is, and we're looking for about another 7% to get to 25,000 by the end of this year.
Mark, the appeal for India's story is quite robust. And in terms of the demographics, in terms of the positioning, and in terms of the quality of companies. Yet, if I look at the foreign commitment towards India, it's been pretty dull and dry, at least this year. Foreign institutional investors have been net sellers of about $10-12 billion. Do you see that changing now that the election risk is behind us?
No, I don't really. Over time, I believe foreigners will have to put more money into India as it grows and it gets larger in global benchmarks. And the bond market will show us the way first, of course, with the inclusion of India in the JP Morgan Emerging Market Bond Index at the end of this month. And I think a couple of other bond indices will follow. So over time, as its weighting in global financial market indices rises, foreigners will just have to allocate more. And as to the selling so far this year, I don't know why it's happening, but I guess that given foreigners already are quite underweight India, and they were at the beginning of this year as well, the people who did have exposure were probably more, emerging market specialist type of investors, and they have been reallocating to China as China's government is making some pretty serious moves to address the problems in their economy. Regardless, I do think over time foreigners will have to allocate more to India as it grows.
Right.
Okay, Mark, great to have you in with those thoughts. And we're going to be watching out for 25K by the year end, you said, right?
25,000.
Okay, great. Good to have you in the show.